name is Rich Sander, and today we're here with Mandisa Thomas, the person who's responsible for, created, and been the motivating force behind Black Nonbelievers. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's awesome to be able to have a chance to talk to you today. And for the people that are listening and watching and stuff, I think what we'd like to find out more is about why did you get involved in the secular community, the atheist community?
My background is that I wasn't formally raised religious, which is quite the anomaly within the Black community.
Yeah.
And I'm 42 years old, soon to be 43, and I was raised during a very progressive time within the Black community. There was a sense of identifying more so with Black history and culture, and so my parents decided to choose a more African name for my brothers and I, and also that played into our sense of our education and how we were taught to critically think growing up. And so I learned early on about how religion, Christianity in particular, was forced on the African captives during enslavement in the United States. And so that was something that always stuck with me during my childhood. And so the first time I said I was an atheist was when I was asked in high school. I'm a native of New York, and I went to the High School of Music and Art Performing Arts. And so I was very outspoken, very militant, militant kid, teenager. And so someone asked me if I was atheist, and I asked what that meant. And so they told me that, well, you don't believe in heaven or hell. And the more I thought about it, I said, well, that sounds about right, because I could never reconcile the idea of a heaven or a hell when there was no evidence.
Yeah.
And so now, while I wasn't formally raised religious, I was classically trained as a singer. And so I used to sing in different churches growing up. And so the doctrine always seemed kind of weird. I used to read different mythology as a kid as well, and so the stuff that I would hear in the Christian doctrine was always a little, mind-boggling to me. It just never made much sense, and so I just could never wrap my mind around, how people were really just supposed to believe in this stuff. I also found it very restrictive in thought, and that it didn't promote expression, and so that was something that that just never sat well with me.
And that's why you were here in New York, right? Where you were going to school and
yes,
coming
this was
to the
while I was
realization that you were.
yes, this was a part of my development growing up, and so I moved to Atlanta.
Yeah.
At the end of 1997, I just had my daughter, my husband and I, and so we settled in Atlanta, and where it is extremely, extremely religious. The presence of religion in the church down there, particularly within the Black community, is extremely high.
Yes.
And so one of the questions that we were always asked is, what church do you go to? Not even, it was just an assumption that I went to church, especially as a Black woman. And so as I continued to grow with my family and in myself, I actually started, upon meeting a few people who criticize religion in the church, and also watching Bill Maher's Religulous, which is one of my favorite documentaries,
Yeah.
I really began to reassess what I thought about religion, and especially the church, and how much I just couldn't stand it. I also started encountering atheists, and by that time, I wasn't sure if I was comfortable with the term at that current time, but
Yes.
the more I did research, the more I connected with folks. I re-identified as an atheist in 2010, and so once I did that, I wanted to start finding other people in person, because my family and I decided that we didn't want to have a bunch of religious people in our circle. We just didn't have that much in common with them, and we really didn't want our children around a bunch of religious influences. And so when I attended my first secular meetup, I encountered what many other Black atheists online had warned me about, which was the feeling of not just isolation, but it was a pure discomfort as to how Black folks or people of color are treated in predominantly white spaces. And, I went in there with an open mind. I said, well, we're all atheists, perhaps, we can definitely find common ground there. But I immediately saw, I immediately encountered that discomfort that comes along with being a person of color in this movement and trying to navigate that, and on both sides, for the attendees, and not to say that there weren't any good conversations, but there were clearly some differences that were not understood by the attendees. And so there was another gentleman, a Black gentleman, who attended the meetup, and I said, we're in Atlanta. It's a predominantly Black city, or heavily populated Black city. There has to be more than 2 or 3 or a handful of Black atheists out here.
Of course.
Perhaps they just don't know that there's a community, and also with the high numbers of religious folks in the Black community, there just has to be a way to connect with more of us. And so that's when the organization, the Black Nonbelievers, was started as Black Nonbelievers of Atlanta in 2011, and later on that year we expanded, or we shortened our name and increased our scope nationally, because soon after there was interest in starting similar groups in different areas and in different cities. And so one of the main reasons why this work was important to me was because it's needed. We're still an underrepresented portion of the secular community, as well as within the Black community. And to be Black and atheist is to sometimes be seen as a traitor to some people. And it can be ostracizing. It can be very isolating for many who thought they were the only ones out there.
And you were experiencing a lot of that in Atlanta as you were developing.
Yes.
Along the point of saying, I'm an atheist, but now I want to get active. I see there's a community.
Yes, absolutely. And I encourage people to be unapologetic as I am. I contend that people should be open as much as possible. We understand that isn't always the case for everyone, and we want to support that as well. We want to support people in their journeys, whether they are still questioning religion or whether they are completely done with it and they just need that like-minded support and networking, which can turn into so many good things from that. And so that was really the focus of, there just has to be more of us out here. And so we didn't want to wait for other people to try to come to us. We wanted to build up that network, to start building up that community.
So you see yourself as an atheist, right?
Oh, absolutely. I identify as an atheist, yes.
How about a humanist?
Humanist as well. I consider myself a skeptic as well. Secular humanist as well. That I do think that there are good things that can be done without a divine premise, that we do good things for the sake of being good as human beings, and that we can identify what is wrong in the world and within our communities and try to fix them.
In terms of your humanistic viewpoint and stuff, how do you see those things that you're looking at the world and making those determinations without doing it from a religious viewpoint?
Well, I consider myself very, very fortunate that I wasn't raised or wasn't indoctrinated with belief, which means that I never just took anything on faith, or I never just accepted something simply because it was told to me. I always tried to practice an evidence-based and also verifiable point of view, and also actions, meaning that I'm going to do some research and I'm going to make informed decisions, come to informed conclusions, and also and based on what has been proven to work, also the mistakes that some people have made, and errors, and what we can learn from them. Of appreciating the scientific method, that it doesn't resolve itself in being right, but that you take something, you test it. If it's right, it's right, and it's wrong. If it's wrong. You go back to the drawing board, and that there's always something new to be learned. And that informs my humanistic perspective, and also being able to look at things on a case-by-case basis, that we don't just paint things with a broad brush, that there are no absolutes really in this life and in the things that in our everyday lives and the things that we go through, that everything needs to be assessed and sometimes reassessed, not to the point where we're driving ourselves insane, but just
short drive for most of us.
Yes, but it is important for us to continue to make informed decisions, look at things from different perspectives, and then come to our decisions and conclusions from there.
What do you think is like a really good rule of thumb if somebody is being skeptical or they're not quite sure of something and they want to take a humanist look at it? What would be kind of a rule of thumb that you would see for most people, especially in the community which you're serving, about how they should look at the world, how they should look at their circumstances, look at something, maybe even something very specific and stuff as a humanist?
Well, a good rule of thumb one thing that I found is helpful is to not beat yourself up over it, because there are so many people, we've been taught to think that we have to have all the answers to everything. And there are times where those answers may not come as quickly as we'd like them to be, and as we'd like them to. And so it is important for people to pace themselves, to take unlearning that indoctrination of religion as well as other thoughts can be a very difficult process. And so it's important for people to pace themselves, take their time, and you don't have to have all of the answers right away. Please do, evaluate your sources. Make sure you do know where they're coming from, and also have some fun with it as well. It doesn't mean that you have to be all serious all the time, but it's not a rat race, if you will, and also go at your own, be comfortable with it. Don't do it because you feel like you have to keep up with others. And in our community, we tend to be so intellectual, or we pride ourselves on our intelligence and how smart we are. But the ability to relate to people and also be understanding does need some work. And so what I found is that for people, if they're on their individual journeys, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know this, or I didn't know it, and I'll just continue to be open-minded.
So you were talking about that they should take some time to know it and to learn it and to understand it and stuff. How do they take that and in a community that is so pressured to think a certain way that there are, I'm sure there's, and I experience this myself, is there's so many people that feel isolated because they just want to ask a question, they just want to observe it and stuff. In terms of the work that you're doing and stuff, how do you help people along with that?
Well, it is a hard thing to go against the grain. It is a hard thing to go against the majority. And I know many of us atheists and humanists and skeptics have often felt like the black sheep, for lack of a better word. We didn't always go along with what everyone else did. And, we were also nervous or afraid of speaking up because we might be teased, ridiculed, or what have you. I would suggest that for those people who are on those journeys and who are nervous about what other people may think, that is understandable, but find those few people who, you're never alone in what you're going through. So it will be important to stay on the lookout and find those people who share those same values and share those same thoughts, and you can bounce these ideas off of each other. There is a good support system throughout this community that can be found by some of everyone. And so I would say that, as hard as it may be, it is important to, try to block out, those voices of dissent, the voices of negativity, the ones who are just saying you're wrong about, with your point of view, because guess what? There are many more of us who feel the same way as they would. And so continue to seek them out.
And people should do that. They should
Absolutely.
definitely seek out and learn and find out, because there is a lot of us that are not religious that are out there. And in terms of what you're doing and stuff, what do you find the things that you're most interested or the best things that you've experienced out of it? What motivates you to do this, and how do you enjoy this experience? Because as organizers, we know that it's a lot of work, and sometimes
and it can be very thankless.
I'll thank you. I'll say thank you right now. Thank you for what you're doing.
What keeps me going is a number of people who, when they find us, there was one woman in St. Louis. I just returned from there a few days ago, and she was in tears because she said, I really thought I was the only one, and that she felt so isolated and so estranged from her family members and friends due to her point of view, due to her non-belief and her questioning. And so to know that there was an organization, and also that we have an affiliate there, to know that there were other Black atheists, in particular Black women atheists, who were stepping up, who were participating and also leading organizations such as ours, was just it was overwhelming in a good way.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when we meet new people for the first time, and they tell us that we were the first atheists that they've ever encountered.
Really?
Especially Black atheists.
Yes.
That knowing that we were there for them and that we were able to provide that support just continues to motivate and inspire me, because even there are times where I get tired. There are times where I feel like, oh my gosh, this is going nowhere, or this is just becoming too much. We have folks who are like, thank you very much for being here. And then we also get some very good questions from people who may still be believers, but that they want to know more about atheism, humanism, etc. So it's not just that people are turning away from us. There is genuine curiosity that's out there, and there are just some people who didn't know before, but by us being visible and being present, then they're able to ask us questions that they wouldn't be able to ask their pastors, or that they wouldn't be able to ask their other religious family members and friends, that they can talk to us and open up. Even if they don't agree with us, they're still able to have a sufficient conversation that goes against what they were raised to do. And so being there for them, whether they're believers or non-believers, has just been one of the most rewarding things ever.
So how would they actually find you?
Well, first, they may find us at our website at blacknonbelievers.org. And I am also everywhere on on social media. I do have a personal Twitter account at Mandy0904. I'm on Instagram at Mandisa0904. You may also find us on Instagram at Nonbelievers Inc. Twitter at Nonbelievers, the B and the N are capitalized. We respond very quickly to email correspondence, where you can also be connected to any of our meetup groups on our website. And we do have a YouTube channel, Nonbelievers Inc. And so, but we're most responsive and we're on Facebook, of course. We have a public page, Black Nonbelievers. I do have a page on Facebook as well. And so people can just contact us through any of those avenues, especially on social media.
And if somebody is not in a large city where there's a meetup group and organizer, how can they interact with you, and how can they feel like they're part of a community if they're not close to an urban area or close to where we already have, or you have an already existing organization? Yes.
So we do have a closed Facebook group that is not, it's searchable, but it's private. No one, anyone who is in the group, their content cannot be seen by family members and friends. And so we do utilize that for people who are in cities where we aren't located. Although I do encourage people to search Meetup, their website, to find at least, there's usually one local atheist, humanist, secular group in any given city, whether it's large or small. And so I do encourage people to participate with those groups, even if there isn't a Black Nonbelievers affiliate there, because it is important for people to see each other face to face and to know that, again, that they are not alone, that they aren't insane, that there are more atheists probably in hiding than in these smaller cities than people care to realize. Mm-hmm. And so at least just finding those other like-minded individuals will be very, very important.
And if somebody did have an interest in helping start an organization or a meetup, a very simple meetup to gather with other Black nonbelievers, how would they go about starting that?
So they can contact us on our website. We do have a Google form that people that we ask be completed. We like to get folks' experiences with organizing, which you don't necessarily have to have any and we have affiliate guidelines, what is expected of the organizers, what we provide as far as materials and startups, and also how they can encourage other people to contribute and support our organization. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, so donations to us are tax deductible, and so we do fundraise because all of our organizations need money, and all of our initiatives do need funding, and so we train on that, and we have a network of organizers to help with anyone who wants to start or become an organizer for an existing affiliate, or if they want to start a new one. And so we definitely work through that process. And whereas we started in 2011 in Atlanta, I'm proud to say that we're up to 15 groups across the United States. And
amazing.
So yes, it shows that what we're doing is needed, and that there is enthusiasm about connecting more with members of the community and also representing as an organization.
And they can go to national
Yes.
organizations, conferences and stuff.
Oh,
And-
absolutely.
And you have your own, right?
Yes, we do. We actually have two coming up.
Oh,
The
two.
first is the Women of Color Beyond Belief Conference, which is also being put on by Black Skeptics Los Angeles and the Women's Leadership Project, and which is headed up by Sakibu Hutchinson. And also we have our cruise convention, which is titled BNC Con 2019. We've been doing this now for 3 years, and we wanted to get away from the traditional conference or convention model, because there are many people who in their religious walks, if you will, in their religious lives, didn't really have a chance to enjoy a part of that, or they didn't get a chance to really explore and take certain trips or travel in ways that they may not have considered before. And so we like to offer this as a way for people to socialize as well as be informed. We will have speakers, we have activists and other leaders within the secular community. And so this is a chance for people to to really let their hair down, if you will. And also if you've never been to one of our events, there's lots of laughter, there's lots of tears of joy, and there's lots of good information and ways for people to get more involved in the movement and to really make their voices heard.
Well, that seems like an amazing opportunity for people to socialize and then be around the speakers and organizers and to spend personal time with them on a cruise. A cruise sounds like a fun way of having a convention. Maybe other organizations ought to do cruise conventions and stuff.
Yes, I know.
Reasonably priced.
Yes, we try to make that. This year is a 6-night cruise aboard the Carnival Horizon, which is one of their newer ships. So I'm looking forward to that. They have they have zip lining. I think they have zip lining, but there's also like a sky ride, and they have all sorts of activities. They have very family friendly as well.
That's based out of which port?
Miami.
Miami.
The port of
okay.
Miami.
Great.
Yes, it's very easy to get to, very accessible, and so we like to take that into consideration as well. We try to make sure that people aren't taking like 2 to 3 planes in order to get to a location. And Miami is one of them. And we do and the good thing about cruises is that they can be paid incrementally. So you don't have to pay it all at once unless you get close to the deadline date. Then you're like, okay, well, now we have to do lump sums. But there, we can space out, we can always space out the payments. And then that way people can, start saving up. We try to advertise a year in advance, but to allow for any changes that may occur. And so this gives people a good way to learn how to travel, also not just in a group, but also with a group of like-minded individuals. The religious don't have the monopoly on fellowship. They don't have the monopoly on just bringing people together. And so this would be it's always fun. The past 2 years that we did this, we had on our shirts. And so there were some folks who were like, who are you? Who are you guys? So that was very interesting. But then we also had some that were like, oh, wow, who are you? I'd like to learn more. And so that's the good thing about when you're out and you're open and you're visible, even if members aren't, when you have leaders and organizers and other people who are, and they are unapologetic with their position, you're able to have some good conversations. You're also able to maybe draw in some other people who were, who either were atheists and humanists or who were curious, but they just didn't know about the community and that there were organizations. And so it really is a good way to get the word out. I know some people are hesitant about proselytizing.
Yeah.
They may consider what the religious side does. They think that we're doing the same thing, but there's nothing wrong with at least just making yourself available to answer the questions as well as just to represent, because that is absolutely important. As the number of religious nuns rise, which we are now one of the largest demographics at 25% overall, 25 to 30%, it's going to be important that people are.
And for people at home, nun is N-O-N-E.
Yes, not the nuns as the yes, not nuns as in the Catholic
religious nuns are rising.
Right,
It's like, whoa, I've heard of those. Huh?
Yes,
No,
N-O-N-E-S.
No category.
Right.
As a nun.
Yes, and I think it's important that, and there's research that is being conducted, and there's a lot of curiosity as to why this is occurring, why people are leaving traditional beliefs behind, and so we do have a part to play in this, and who's represented, how we represent our point of view as well as the people in our organizations. And so it's important for us, we're not trying to tell people that they should become atheists as we are, but to reconsider what they've previously believed, and that if this is the journey that they're on, then that is okay. And I think just letting people know that it's okay is a good start.
Yeah, I think in communities that we have, we spend a lot of time to just socialize ourselves with each other, and to let people know that as atheists and non-believers that we're human too. We're just enjoying each other's company.
Absolutely.
And that there's a chance to fellowship, or we don't want to say that they have a monopoly on it, but that for you and your organization and to have people, we call it socialize, but it's just becoming friends with other people in the movement and stuff. So
friends, colleagues, we're building families, we're building up our voting block. So there's a number of important things that we're doing, and they're all important because one leads to another. Some may be done in conjunction with others, and that's a good thing. It's good to show how multifaceted we can be, and how we already are, but that there's a lot of opportunities. There's many opportunities for us to just engage and galvanize and get people more involved.
So you talking about getting engaged and galvanized in a voting block, and what are those things that you see as a humanist that we can do either individually or with groups to further that, to let the world know that there are other people out there that are non-religious that also have political viewpoints.
Yes. So yes, there are some of our members and organizers that are more politically inclined. Of course, for 501c3 organizations, we're limited in that regard. There are certain, we can encourage our members to vote, but we cannot tell them who to vote for. And so that's definitely a line that we try not to cross, even though we know the other side kind of does it. But a good thing is for people to get involved if they are more politically inclined. Register people to vote. Get involved with other community efforts and initiatives, but also do so openly as a non-believer. There are a number of people who are involved with other organizations, and they've been able to kind of spot where there's religious privilege and actually change that. And so, put something in people's ears and say, hey, this isn't right. And especially when there's a public space, you don't have the right to assert your beliefs over everyone else's. And so getting people to be more outspoken about their position and explaining it in a way that is unapologetic. And I know I've said that word before. Explaining it in a way that they don't have to feel they don't have to feel intimidated by the religious side, because again, much of it is about ignorance and what people don't know. And so as more of us get involved and we start recognizing or noticing that the privilege in certain areas, then they can work together and work with people to try to change that, you know, and to change also the mindset, just being out there helping people and openly as atheists and non-believers. You know, there have been a lot more charitable, there have been many more charitable efforts within the secular community on behalf of non-believers that have helped with certain disasters, and you know, when there's someone either in their local community who needed help, they're often the first ones to help. And so what this does is it redefines the narrative, it reshapes it. It also destigmatizes atheism and humanism and those of us who do not believe in a God. And so, and not that we should just be doing these things just to do that. If it is well within your heart and mind to help someone simply because they need the help, then that is what we should do, and again, be unapologetic about it.
Well, I think that's a great way for a lot of people to really understand as secular voters that we're out there and there's a number of us, and as the nuns rise, so do we. And
yes, and also that there are a number of key issues that we have in common with believers that affect all of us, and that we're not just looking out for, you know, for our fellow non-believers and atheists, or rather we shouldn't be, but that there are issues on the table that affect us as human beings overall. And the same rights I want for myself are the same rights I want for my family members and friends and other acquaintances who are believers, because they shouldn't be denied those rights either. The same way we shouldn't be denied them, and there should be no privilege as far as what someone believes, especially if it isn't rooted in evidence. Our evidence-based values will be beneficial and should be beneficial to everyone, whether they believe or not. And I think that there is definitely more common ground that we can find on certain issues, and that we have found with, you know, with the other side, if you will. And that comes from, you know, expressing our position and also speaking up on issues that aren't necessarily atheist related, but more human rights related.
As a humanist, we're looking at those particular values in terms of what you, as a humanist, outside of being part of Black Nonbelievers, but just as a human being and a humanist and stuff, what are those things that people could look to as values that can be how they view the world in a way that they can start to understand the politics, the culture, dealing with other people? What are those humanistic values that you look at and want to promote and let people know that these are humanistic values? This is how we look at the world.
Right. So first, let me just say that in addition to my role as a president of Black Nonbelievers, which is still volunteer, by the way, I also serve on the boards concurrently for American Atheists and the American Humanist Association. I was just recently appointed to the board for the American Humanist Association. And so what I tend to try to look at as values are just being good for the sake of being good, do unto others, you know, just try to treat people the way you want to be treated, but also to treat people accordingly. Meaning that as good as you would want to be, it is also important for us to look at things with a critical lens and realize when you can and when you cannot help certain people, and that it doesn't have to drain you. It doesn't have to, you don't have to feel bad when you cannot help someone. We try to help people to help themselves, that there is a return in helping people to get to a place where they are looking at things a bit more critically and a bit more objectively, you know, having an objective point of view. Even if we don't agree with something, we can try to understand it. And so having that point of view, and also just practicing that and putting it into our everyday lives. Just not just saying it for the cameras or not just saying it on the stage or in front of people, actually doing that on an everyday basis. And my background as far as my career path has been hospitality, has been customer service, and it has been engaging people. And I found that that's something that I love to do. I'm good at it. I know how to, I'm always working on how to better convey my thoughts and my words to other people. But when you do it in a way that is relatable, it does make a huge difference. So, just treating people with the, golden rule, at least err on the side of, being cordial, common courtesy. Hello, please, thank you, stuff like that. It makes a huge difference in our humanism. I know there are some people who tend to throw around humanism as this banner of pride, which they should, but if you're not treating people on that basic human level, then what good is it? Mm-hmm. And so I found that the basic incorporation of just treating people the way they should be is often that, but also with definitely with a view that you're looking at things from a perspective that is always going to be open, and that you're not just going to take anything at face value. There's going to be some substance to it, as well as far as like evidence and information.
And people can find out those basic tenets of the Humanist Manifesto, which is part of the American Humanist Association, so they can look that up themselves and see for themselves. How would you say, we talked a lot about interpersonal relationships with people and how they deal with each other, but how does some of the humanistic ethics would apply to government or business? Well, let's take government for one thing, because we got a big election coming up that people have to take a look at.
So that's a tough one, because the government has not always been on the side of humanistic efforts. But it's an institution that is one thing I found is that my husband working for the federal government, I was formerly a contractor for the federal government as well. There's moving parts. There's different moving parts. It's not just this one big machine. Mm-hmm. It's made up of people. It's made up of people who work in the system. It's made up of people who utilize the system. And humans are prone to error, and that it's not a perfect system. And I think as humanists, it isn't a perfect system either, that sometimes we may have to call things as we see them, and we make mistakes. And that's a part of how we incorporate our values, how we can learn from mistakes that have been made previously, how we also look to resolve them, and also how we're looking towards the future. And So
as a secular voter or looking at one's personal humanistic ethics and stuff, how would you describe for them to go through that particular process to look at ways of looking at government and their involvement in that government? Because we're all in a...
So first, it's important to understand the difference between the different governments. We have our city governments, other local governments, you have your state governments, and also the federal government. That it's not just this one big conglomerate machine. And it's important, and as exhausting as it may be, when you become involved with the voting process, it is good to do research on candidates, find out where they stand, and also that it is okay that if you have the qualifications to also run for certain offices, and also go to certain meetings where your input is needed, that there are many laws that are passed and there needs to be more citizen input, but they aren't showing up because they tend to be very tedious, they tend to be very time consuming, and most people, we want things quick. We want a quick fix, we want to see the big changes, but people need to understand that they're often incremental. They're often small, and they're often unseen. Not that they're invisible, but that they're unseen. And that process can be very tiring, but it is necessary, especially for people who are informed and who are voters, that it is important to start showing up at these meetings when they can, because, we do have lives outside of that. But researching your candidates, talking to them, getting involved with the lobbying process. I served on the board previously for the Secular Coalition for America, and they actually do train people on how to lobby, how to speak to their representatives on the local and federal level. And so and it's often you can do it for free, taking advantage of that process that for some of us and for some of our ancestors were previously denied us. Mm-hmm. So it's important now to utilize those benefits and make them work to our advantage, to make sure that the people who represent us are doing the right things.
And if somebody wants to step up and be involved in politics or run for office, that's great. But for the average person, it's better to do some engagement, I guess. Is
absolutely.
The way I would describe it and stuff. But for Black nonbelievers, they have opportunities to look at that they do have a voice. They do have an opportunity that is equal to everyone else, and they have that opportunity to get engaged. It doesn't have to be everything.
Right.
But
I recently was at an event where there were some local representatives in the Atlanta area, and I was explaining to them the premise of our organization, what we do, the communities that we build, and that some of our members may live in their districts. Mm-hmm. And so it's maybe good for them to start talking to, their secular, their secular constituents. And that it shouldn't be a hard conversation for people to have. But yes, as a community and as an organization, we encourage and empower our members to start having these conversations, because it's often a very intimidating, it can be almost terrifying for some people to speak on their non-belief, which is understandable. But in having that community support, we're able to encourage and empower each other to start having these conversations, because then they know that there are ideas that they may be able to bounce off of us. There may be some things that they can participate in and that we can put together to help reach more of the representatives, whether they vote for them or not, but at least having the opportunity to speak to them and making their voices heard.
It's an amazing resource to be able to have all that available, that a person can come to your Facebook page or to your website and to realize that there's a community for them to be involved with, that there's chances to be involved and active.
Yes.
And there's also a way to be able to look at the world in terms of their secular, atheistic, humanistic viewpoint and stuff. We talked a little bit about how people do this and interact with each other. We talked a little bit about our government and stuff. Now, the business community is a big part of what goes on in our lives and stuff. And as a humanist, we look at different things that are going on in terms of business. That sometimes there's with business that there are opportunities for us to take, I wouldn't say a higher road, but to be able to look at it from a humanistic lens or a humanistic viewpoint to say, I want to own a business or I want to interact with a business. Sometimes there's a discussion about whether you support a business or not support a business based off of your values and stuff. I don't know if you've had those particular conversations and talking to in your discussion panels and your forums and your meetups. You're running a company basically and an organization, and to be able to use those values to run them and stuff. So I'd like to know how you feel about what people can think about their humanistic ethics when it comes to business.
Yes, so yes, we encourage everyone, whether they are patronizing or supporting a secular organization or a nonprofit or a for-profit, to know who these who these businesses support. I know there are many atheists and non-believers who do not support Chick-fil-A because they support those quote-unquote family values organizations, and they put forth that quote-unquote family, that Christian family values thing, which tends to be very anti-LGBTQ. So as far as within our own communities, there are members who are business, they are entrepreneurs, and some of them cannot be openly, they cannot be out as non-believers because they would lose business from their religious counterparts. But it is important for us to, as a matter of fact, there's a restaurant in Harlem called Bell Harlem, and the owners are atheists. And they're openly atheists, and I think that it would be beneficial for many local area groups to patronize that business. Not just on the basis of, but that the service is great, the food is delicious, and that it's also a good opportunity to meet new and support each other in a way that is beneficial. Now, I like the Minnesota Atheist does. They have a place where they meet usually every Sunday, and they get a discount similar to what churches get. They go to a very atheist-friendly restaurant, which also they advertise for. We can seek sponsorships. We can seek different business solutions as atheists and secular groups, just like other businesses and organizations would. And so I think that for those of us getting up, again, that courage, to say that, we're not completely different. We do have to look at our initiatives as business. We do need money, we do need funds, and it would be ideal that we're supporting each other, that if there are some supporters with some deep pockets that would be willing to support our organizations so that we can develop and thrive, then that's great. But also reaching out to the general public and to the people who didn't know we existed, who might be able to contribute a certain amount per month, a nominal amount, that would also help grow. Considering all of these avenues, as well as the legal channels that we have every right to participate in. Like, for example, our organization, you can support us through Amazon Smile, like other organizations. And so taking advantage of those resources, especially as a 501c3 nonprofit organization, is important. And so looking at different ways to generate revenue and income, as well as facilitating partnerships, hopefully with other humanist and atheist businesses, but also those businesses who are very LGBTQ friendly, who are very atheist friendly, regardless of whether they're believers or not. If they treat people like people, then it's best that we support each other.
And for those businesses that are out there, if they want to support a local meetup group, let us know.
Yes,
talk to your group or one of the national organizations, and find a local meetup group. All the meetup groups are looking for supportive restaurants and pubs and places that they can hold events, and also if people want to donate, a little goes a long way.
It does.
I know your organization's seeking donations all the time to help out, but that money goes a long way to help everything out.
It does, and because we're event oriented, I like that people can get something and get information and value for what they're supporting, because again, our position is one that is still seldom heard in our community, and I'm proud to say that as an organization that we have actually grown the number of Black atheist voices, whether it is through literature, through books, through activism, through creativity. And so we've been able to do that. We've been able to, we have provided that, we've provided that space and offered that space where others can develop their activism and develop in that leadership pipeline. And within other organizations that might not be as readily available. And so we try to grow that, not just within our organization, but also within the other organizations that we work with.
It's amazing all the different things that you've been able to do and provide the breadth of experience that people can have involved in their community, and it's will be exciting to see that grow as more people become aware of that.
Yes.
I know that we have here in New York done that too. People here in New York, they want to be involved. There's an affiliate organization here in New York.
It is, yes.
And they're very active.
Yes, they are. I'd like to give a shout out to Kevon Cameron, who last year revived the New York City affiliate, and he's been taking it off. They've been doing a wonderful job. They've been collaborating with other area groups, and people wouldn't think that a city like New York would need atheist groups, but we do. And if you take a look at almost any neighborhood within the Black community, there's churches everywhere. And so we can't escape we cannot escape the religious presence no matter where we go, or this idea of what it means to identify as Black, especially in this country where religion is so tied into the community that it's almost inseparable. It's pretty much, for some people, most people, it is inseparable, which can be very, very challenging. And so, to know that there's that support there, and that there are people who understand and that they can be supported, it has just been crucial.
Can you give us another example of why you enjoy doing this? Give us another example of an experience that you really enjoy about why you're doing this and what's going on.
Yes. So recently we were contacted by the Smithsonian Museum of African American Culture. They are putting together a 6-part series called God Talk, which is about blacks who are leaving religion, black millennials in particular. And so they asked me to find a participant for the Atlanta area production. And so one of our members, who is a regular participant, she's now starting to become more of an organizer. She represented our organization as well as the atheist perspective. What was so great about that taping was that when during the Q&A portion of the panel that she was on, the question was asked if the black church has been beneficial to black women. And it wasn't just us. Almost everyone in the entire audience said no. So what was great about that is that the perspectives and the voices are becoming louder, and the criticism of particularly the black church is becoming louder. And it was an honor to be contacted by the Smithsonian, and we've been contacted by a few prominent media publications. I've written for CNN's website. We were featured on CBS Sunday Morning, in National Geographic, and in Playboy. I love saying that I was in Playboy, which was great. But it was for an article about the American Atheist Convention in 2018, and so part of that is gratifying, that it not just because our organization is getting recognition, but our members have an opportunity to sufficiently lend their voices to professional productions. Because from what I understand about the Smithsonian's production is that once they're finished the 6-city tour, they're going to turn it into a documentary, which will be featured in the museum in DC. So that there is now a very good chance that we will end up as a part of history. So this is the work that we're doing here and the voices that we're amplifying, and also educating folks on the history and the historic presence of black atheists, humanists, and freethinkers. This is reshaping the narrative as it needs to be, because just as science and just as the scientific method updates information, so does history, so do historical facts. Mm-hmm. So they kind of go hand in hand with that. And I think that we are becoming a part, we are making history here. And that has also been one of the best parts about this, is that it wasn't the intent. It wasn't the intent for me to just say, oh, I just want to take over the world. Yeah. But being able to develop the organization where others have been able to thrive and become so comfortable in expressing themselves, and then also it gaining some traction and also interest by the general public, has just made it that much more rewarding.
Well, I thank you for all your work. I know sometimes it's thankless, but we want to make sure as humanists that we are saying thank you. Yes. For all the work that you're doing. It's amazing to see the breadth and scope of everything that you're doing and trying to take on, and I wish you the best of luck in the future, and I'll do what I can and what we'll do here in New York, and really appreciate everything that you're doing, and thank you for spending the last hour with us.
No problem, it was a pleasure, it was great. Thank you.
Well, it's awesome to be able to have a chance to hear firsthand exactly everything that you're doing, and hopefully everybody that's watching and stuff gets out of it what I got out of it, and it's amazing to see all what you're doing, and we look forward to a much brighter future together.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you very much.